12:33 Eastern Daylight Time this morning. Donald Trump snapped. His pretrial release must be revoked immediately, and he must be taken into custody immediately. Warned by Judge Chutkan to temper his public rage, Trump instead descended from a weekend of threats by proxy and attacks by reposting to what are unequivocal, undeniable, and indefensible direct attacks on the judge and the special counsel. Quote, "How dare low-life prosecutor deranged Jack Smith break into my former Twitter account without informing me and indeed trying to completely hide this atrocity from me." 12:33 a.m., unquote. Yes, Trump actually used the word atrocity. And yes, he apparently knew nothing of the court order, even though it was last January, and it was in all the papers. At 1:14 Eastern this morning, Trump referred to a quote by highly partisan Judge Chutkan, "She obviously wants me behind bars," unquote. The laws of this country must, finally, today, crush Donald Trump. This is exactly what the judge warned his attorneys against just last Friday, not even 72 hours earlier. Quote, "I caution you and your client to take special care in your public statements about this case," she said at the evidentiary protective order hearing. Quote, "Even arguably ambiguous statements from parties or their counsel can threaten the process." Then she threatened him with something far worse than just a gag order. Quote, "The more a party makes inflammatory statements about this case, which could taint the jury pool, the greater the urgency will be that we proceed to trial quickly." Translation, every threat you make, the trial starts sooner. Response, first, Trump had others make his threats for him. 6 times yesterday and last night, Trump reposted inflammatory statements by others, by Stephen Miller, by Greg Jarrett, by the necklace Attorney General of West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, and most relevantly, by former Grassley aide Mike Davis, who dishonestly posted that Judge Chutkan, quote, "openly admitted she's running election interference against Trump." There is no law, no rule, no ruling that Trump does not think he can find a way around. He, by reposting others, was taunting Judge Chutkan. You say I can't say anything threatening? He was testing Judge Chutkan. Let's see you punish me for simply amplifying threats by others. She did not punish him. Naturally, she did not. It was the weekend. And she is not a psychopath. She knows the difference between the weekend and the week. He then decided he no longer needed to be cute at 12:33, accusing the special counsel of committing an atrocity against him, and at 1:14, accusing the judge of having prejudged the case. And he thereby stopped even the pretense of obeying the letter of her rulings. This is not to say that before he broke, Trump had not violated their spirit. It was with those reposted insults that he did that. And, moreover, as he stood at the Iowa State Fair in Des Moines next to his political prostitute, Matt Gaetz. This time it was not Trump summoning his stochastic terrorists vaguely and indirectly. It was Gaetz openly calling for, quote, force on Trump's behalf, with Trump silent alongside him.
Mr. President, I cannot stand these people that are destroying our country, that are opening our borders, that are weaponizing our federal law enforcement against patriotic Americans who love this nation as we should. We are having a great time at the fair. We love standing with you, but we know that only through force do we make any change in a corrupt town like Washington, D.C.
It is quite literally true that after Judge Chutkan's order Friday, if that had been Trump saying that and not Gaetz, Trump would have had his pretrial release revoked by nightfall, or he would be back in front of the judge today, or at minimum, he would have seen the trial date advanced a month to December 2nd, not January 2nd. Given Trump's history, given MAGA's history, given Gaetz's history, given January 6th, it was so bad that even Gaetz was terrified. He tried to back away from it. He tweeted that night, quote, "Do you agree we must force change to a corrupt system?" Force change, in all caps. Force change, as if he had not said only through force, as if he had not just threatened more violence, more insurrection, more traitorous betrayal. Again, as always, as it always will be, this is Trump in miniature. He matters, the judge does not. He matters, the country does not. He matters, the law does not. The law should crush him today.
Comply with the judge's order regarding the latest indictment. We'll have to take a look at the order. The whole thing is a fake.
If that was hard to clearly understand, a reporter asked, "Do you plan to comply with the judge's order, etc.?" And Trump, for a moment, falling off script, answered, "We'll have to take a look at the order." Last Friday, before Judge Chutkan, his attorney said Trump would abide by her order. Within 24 hours, he had broken it. Within 24 hours, he had had a political prostitute threaten violence over it. Within 36 hours, he had begun another online campaign by proxy against her and against the prosecutors. Any other defendant would already have been crushed by the law. It is Judge Chutkan's responsibility to defend the law and defend the nation today, now, without further warning, without further delay, without further appeasement. Trump spent the rest of his weekend in abject terror over what is to come in Georgia, almost certainly to come tomorrow. Between reposted attacks on Judge Chutkan, he posted his own attacks on District Attorney Willis. And he has good reason to be terrified. The Guardian and CNN broke two parts of the same story. On top of everything else Trump did in Georgia by phone, by Rudy Giuliani, by public pressure, that video that showed the GOP chairwoman of Coffee County, Georgia, Kathy Latham, holding the door open to the local board of elections so two techs could illegally download the voting data from the rural county onto a portable hard drive. The Coffee County breach. Well, prosecutors have text messages and emails, quote, directly connecting members of Trump's legal team, including Bernie Kerik, to that breach in advance. On January 1, 2021, CNN reported, days ahead of the January 7 voting systems breach, Catherine Freese, an attorney working with Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and other Trump allies, shared a written invitation to examine voting systems in Coffee County with a group of Trump allies. She literally sent a separate version of the invitation to Bernard Kerik, and to once again underscore that democracy survives less by our efforts than by the stupidity of those who would destroy it, this idiot titled the letter of invitation, quote, "Letter of Invitation." The Guardian's Hugo Lowell fleshed it out. The potential charges at issue are computer trespass felonies. He adds this could all be the backbone of racketeering charges. The Guardian does not mention Kerik or Giuliani or Sidney Powell, whose name has been connected since at least last year to this harebrained scheme to prove voter fraud in a county Trump won with 70% of the vote. We expect the indictments tomorrow because now two of the witnesses who testified to Fani Willis's special purpose grand jury, journalist George Cheedy and former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, confirm on the record that they have been subpoenaed to show up before the regular grand jury tomorrow and will do so. The regular grand jury can indict. The special purpose grand jury could not. If a fourth set of indictments were not terrifying enough for Trump, one particular newspaper headline about them should be, quoting it, "Georgia is ground zero for Trump exhaustion," as another indictment looms. The article is about Georgia Republicans suddenly realizing that this is not about them or their party or their state, but only about him, and it has been since 2020, without interruption. This underlines a point I have brought up before. There are limits to how much of the Trump soap opera even Trump cultists will put up with, even if the responses are specific to a city, state, or region and are a long time happening. They are also showing up in fundraising, which is declining with each new indictment. Oh, and perhaps most terrifying to Trump might be where that particular headline about Trump exhaustion was seen. It's in the Wall Street Journal. Two more Trump points in a moment, but first, through the looking glass, people, or more correctly, through the funhouse mirror that is the right wing, a place where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is gaining on Joe Biden in their, quote, race, unquote, for the Democratic nomination. I think the RFK Jr. thing might be over now. Yesterday in Iowa, I presume he was there with all the other Republicans, Kennedy announced he's in favor of a federal ban on abortion at 15 or 21 weeks. Quote, I believe a decision to abort a child should be up to the women during the first 3 months of life. Asked by NBC if he meant a ban beyond that time, he said yes, going for that vast national abortion ban group of Democratic primary voters. When he realized what had happened, Kennedy fell on the, it was too loud in there excuse, claiming he misheard the question, that he does not believe in any abortion ban, which doesn't explain why in his first statement he limited a woman's right to choose to 3 months or used the phrase 3 months of life. NBC produced a transcript of their interview with Kennedy. It is clear he did not misunderstand a thing and is lying. And also over here in Cloud Cuckoo Land, now there's a Hunter Biden special counsel, and the loudest and most shameless of Republicans are angry about it and about who it is, even though they've spent a year demanding it and demanding that guy. Ted Cruz, last September 19th, letter to Merrick Garland. We, the undersigned, write to request that David C. Weiss be extended special counsel protections and authorities to conduct the Hunter Biden investigation. Ted Cruz yesterday, Weiss is, quote, a wildly inappropriate person to be a special counsel. Marsha Blackburn, last September 19th, signed the same letter as Cruz, and I'm caveating this. Lately, the Medusa of the Senate has exhibited some cognitive deficits, which is truly serious since she didn't start with much in the cognitive bank as it was. Marsha Blackburn yesterday, Weiss is a, quote, collaborator. Chuck Grassley, last September 19th, same letter. Chuck Grassley on Friday, Weiss has been compromised. Chuck adds he may have run over another deer. Jamie Comer spent the spring and the summer holding hearing after nonsensical hearing, insisting Biden was preventing Weiss's appointment as special counsel. Friday, Comer said Weiss's appointment as special counsel is, quote, part of the Justice Department's efforts to attempt a Biden family cover-up. Tim Scott, last September 19th, also not a bright bulb, same letter. Tim Scott Friday, Weiss's appointment raises further questions about the independence of Biden's DOJ. You asked for this guy. And then there are two fascists who, even in this uniform display of the reality that the Republicans have only one policy, as Aaron Sorkin wrote in The American President, they are interested in two things and two things only, making you afraid of it and telling you who to blame for it. Even against that backdrop, they are particularly appalling. Good old Jim Jordan wrote to the Attorney General a long, angry letter, which he summarized on Twitter with, quote, why hasn't DOJ appointed a special counsel for the Hunter Biden investigation? This he did on February 28th. Friday, a Jordan spokesman announced that DOJ appointing a special counsel for the Hunter Biden investigation, quote, is just a new way to whitewash the Biden family corruption, unquote. And yet that turnaround, 5.5 months, is nothing compared to that which was performed by a creature who wrote an op-ed on the Fox website saying the failure to name Weiss as special counsel confirmed, quote, political interference from the Biden administration, unquote. Interference so bad it, quote, smells, and that it demanded the potential impeachment of Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. He wrote that on July 12th, 34 days ago. Now, the same creature says the appointment of Weiss is an attempt to, quote, obstruct congressional investigations or whitewash the Biden family corruption. Who went from whining and bitching about no to whining and bitching about yes in just 34 days? The Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. I would call McCarthy a worm, but worms generally only keep digging in one direction, not two. You know, I truly think Republicans are nearly universally better at politics, and especially slimy, chiselly politics, than are Democrats. But why they do not take the win here makes no sense to me. They could claim they forced Garland and or Biden to appoint the special counsel and the one they wanted, and then still go ahead and rip his investigation at every stage. Instead, they could not break themselves of the habit of automatic opposition and gainsaying to anything Democrats do. This has already taken the steam out of the entire Hunter Biden crap and out of them. I suppose it's too much to assume that maybe they had heard this was coming. Yesterday, Congressman Jamie Raskin said House Democrats are going to release a report about all of the foreign government emoluments, millions of dollars we can document, that Trump pocketed at the hotels, at the golf courses, through business deals, when he was president, and that his family got. Well, okay, Jamie, that is great. But it is billions, not millions. And if this is a complete report, it's going to require about 7 people to lift just one copy of it, isn't it? And then there's Ivana Trump, literally causing her ex-husband trouble from beyond the grave. It is now nearly 13 months since she died when she fell down a staircase in her home, and if she had been the ex-wife of a Democrat, any Democrat, we would be in month 13 of the 24/7 accounts of her, quote, murder, unquote, and the, quote, lead suspect, unquote, namely the ex. But instead, we had none of that, but we have had the enduringly macabre scene of her grave being near the first tee at Trump's Chintzy Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, now made more macabre still because, as the British tabloid The Daily Mail reports, the temporary memorial plaque, which has now been there a year in lieu of the actual headstone they'll get to eventually, is, well, their headline says it all. Quote, Ivana Trump's cordoned-off grave is barely visible in completely overgrown area of Trump's 506-acre Bedminster, New Jersey golf course. And there is, as they say, art. A series of photos of, grass. Some of the grass is turning brown. Some of the grass is scarred by patches of dirt. Some of the grass is obscuring part of Ivana's marker so that the first 4 letters of her first name really can't be seen anymore. And it looks like it reads simply and solely A. Trump. On the other hand, think of the good news. Between the thick grass near the marker and the total absence of grass just inches away, if you are teeing off on one and you really slice the damn thing, it'll now be much, much easier to find your ball. Also of interest here, it's nothing less than a scene out of any 1920s Chicago mob movie or at least one Jimmy Stewart Western. The newspaper has the goods on their corrupt leader and is about to expose him, so the corrupt leader sends in his goons to trash the office and kill the publisher. Only this is no movie, and this is not 1888 or 1926. It's 2023. In a Kansas town halfway between Wichita and Topeka. And the bad guys, who in fact trashed the newspaper office and led to the death of the publisher, they are the town police. The FBI better get a book of arrest warrants. Fascism in Marion, Kansas. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with, Keith Olbermann.
Postscripts to the news. Some headlines, some updates, some snark, some predictions. Dateline, Marion, Kansas. Waiting on the Department of Justice to launch an investigation into Police Chief Gideon Cody of that town and Marion County District Court Magistrate Judge Laura Vire. The judge signed a search warrant that let Chief Cody's fascist stormtroopers of Marion, Kansas, literally trash the offices of the newspaper, the Marion County Record. They destroyed part of it. They seized the rest, including personal cell phones, all the computers, and all the devices of the staff, including its 98-year-old co-owner, Joan Meyer, all of her devices and equipment. Her stress at the damage to the paper and the loss of her own computer, her router, her Alexa, her ability to stream shows at home was such that she collapsed and died the next day. What preceded this? And the word is preceded, not provoked, because this is still America, and the destruction of a newspaper offices by the cops has to be met by the stiffest of jail terms. As Marisa Cabas wrote in her Substack, quoting publisher Eric Meyer of the paper, quote, "We've been investigating the police chief. When he was named chief just 2 months ago, we got an outpouring of calls from his former co-workers, making a wide array of allegations against him, saying that he was about to be demoted at his previous job and that he retired to avoid demotion and punishment over sexual misconduct charges and other things," unquote. The FBI needs to be at Chief Cody's home and the homes of his officers today. It is only unfortunate that they will not be able to charge any of them with murder. Dateline, White Deer, Texas. And now we have the backstory of the tale of Ronnie Jackson has a bad night at the rodeo. The one so bad that the first public statement from the disgraced congressman's office after it occurred was to insist that Ronnie Jackson had not been drinking. That's where they started. Firstly, one of the deputy sheriffs involved in the incident said no, he'd been drinking. Quote, "He was backstage earlier in the evening drinking alcohol while I was working security in that area." An EMT added, "He did appear drunk." If you don't remember this story, on the 29th of July, a teenaged girl had a seizure at a rodeo in White Deer outside Amarillo. Jackson, formerly the White House physician until there was a whole thing with, over-prescribing pills and stuff. Jackson said he rushed to her aid but was manhandled and cuffed by overzealous deputies. Not really. Officers got to the girl first, and they told everybody to back away from her so EMTs who were at the rodeo and on their way over could treat her. Jackson would not do so. Police say they told him 4 times to back away before they threw him face first to the ground. Police say Jackson then threatened to, quote, beat one of the troopers and bury the sheriff at the next election. And at one point, he bumped a trooper with his chest, and he was still threatening them and swearing at them, even after they removed the handcuffs and put him back in his own car without charging or detaining him. Oh, and guess what? There's body cam footage of all this. They have not released it yet. I'll get the popcorn. Thank you, Nancy Faust. And Dateline New York City, Neeraj Kamlani is out as co-president of CBS News. This is hours after the New York Post reported that he had told colleagues he was being removed following clashes with high-profile anchors and HR complaints about his abusive behavior. Kamlani is the guy who also tried to appease the right wing by hiring former Trump Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney as a CBS News commentator. Nobody would have noticed. I mean, it's Mick Mulvaney, for crying out loud, except that in announcing the hiring to staff, Kamlani explained he had made the move in part, quote, to make sure that we are getting access to both sides of the aisle, which is a priority because we know the Republicans are going to take over most likely in the midterms. A lot of the people that we're bringing in are helping us in terms of access to that side of the equation, unquote. Yeah, how did that all work out for you, Neeraj? Postscript, this podcast continues to burgeon. I have just rented a new studio for it, and a video version of it is coming at some point soon. But I'm only 9/10 of a mile away from CBS News World headquarters in New York, and provided you'd let me bring in one or two of the dogs every day, I mean, I could hike over and run it for you in my spare time. You're welcome. Plus, Norah O'Donnell, the anchor of the CBS Evening News, pretty much got her first TV break on my old show on MSNBC. And I can do a fairly decent impression of CBS News. Just saying. I don't talk enough about myself on this show. I just invoked Aaron Sorkin, so still ahead on Countdown. I looked at my calendar of stupid stuff that I've lived through. What do you know? We just passed the anniversary of the day Aaron Sorkin flat out stole a line from my father and put it in one of his TV series, which was about me. Things I promised not to tell next. I really don't. I don't talk enough about myself. We should have like an extra half an hour a day or just talk about myself. First, time for the daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's worst persons in the world. The Bronze Bill Hemmer of Fox, quote, News, unquote. Hemmer is now co-anchoring with the amazingly nitwitted Dana Perino in an allegedly non-commentary news hour in which the combined IQ of the anchors might not reach triple digits. I worked with Hemmer briefly at CNN, very affable, very pleasant, very stupid, but he has outdone himself. Interview about critical race theory or wherever the spinning wheel of endless umbrage stopped that day, and Hemmer was reminiscing about his own education and how he thought traveling to the place where someone wrote a historically important book would help him understand it better. Quote, I remember 20 years ago going to Trier, Germany, and trying to find the home of Karl Marx, because, 1848, he wrote Mein Kampf. Hemmer was born in November 1964, meaning that since at least 1985, he has been searching in vain for where Karl Marx wrote Hitler's Mein Kampf. When we all know that, in fact, Karl Marx wrote the bestseller Groucho and Me. Runner-up the Baltimore Orioles, and specifically Senior Vice President Greg Bader and CEO John Angelos. You will recall that they suspended team play-by-play man Kevin Brown for having had the nerve to read on the air the team's past record against its rivals from Tampa. History supplied by the team and given to Brown to read by the team-run television broadcast. Brown had violated the sacred oath. He had revealed that the Orioles had in their past actually lost games. Kevin Brown returned to the booth Friday after the 2-week suspension for doing nothing that would make any Oriole fan think less of the team. And then these words were put out in Brown's Twitter account. Quote, unfortunately, recent media reports have mischaracterized my relationship with my adopted hometown Orioles. The fact is, I have a wonderful relationship with the organization. I ask that everyone disregard the distracting noise of the past few days. I have worked closely with O's SVP Greg Bader for the past 4 years, and John Angelos and I have a solid dialogue based on mutual respect. We are all good here in Birdland. I have no idea who wrote that, but I would bet on, it's just a guess here, Senior Vice President Greg Bader and John Angelos. See, I once had to write something like that at MSNBC after they tried to suspend me, and in so doing breached my contract, and I realized that if I played ball for another 2-3 months with them, they would have to pay me like $18 million. And I could then sign elsewhere for a lot more than that. And I did both. May the same happen to you, hostage tweet producer Kevin Brown. But our winner, General Michael Flynn, and how we permit this madman to walk free in this country is inexplicable. Flynn has now been condemned by everybody from General Barry McCaffrey to the Auschwitz Museum after a speech in which he blamed the Jewish victims of the Holocaust for not fighting back and defeating their Nazi captors. Flynn lied to his audience and said that as German Jews were forced onto the trains to the concentration camps, there were, quote, thousands of them and not many guards. Flynn added that the victim said, "Okay, here's my child," and got on the train, unquote. The "why didn't the Jews fight back" trope is one of the more grossly subtle forms of anti-Semitism. It has been appropriated by worse creatures even than Flynn. He seemed to think he was warning his followers about, who knows? Because to equate yourself with the victims of Hitler is to obscure the truth. Flynn and his followers are the Nazis. But you already know this. You probably even heard the audio already of Flynn's deplorable victim blaming. What you may not have seen was the detailed and surprisingly restrained 600-word answer to Flynn from the Auschwitz Museum about the facts of the rounding up in Germany and the firepower used by the Germans and those who fought back against the Nazis. And even more important than that, you probably did not see Flynn's astonishing reply in which he doubled down. Flynn tweeted in response, quote, "The fact you need to explain so much shows you don't understand the point I'm making," unquote. Seriously, Michael Flynn is explaining the Holocaust to the Auschwitz Museum. General Michael Flynn, traitor to the uniform he once wore, and in desperate need of immediate institutionalization or a neurological exam or an arrest or all of the above. And quite literally, today's worst person in the world. Finally, our number one story on the countdown, things I promised not to tell, and back to my favorite topic, me. I heard Jeff Daniels say the words, and in the next minute, my cell phone rang. It was an ex-girlfriend. While we were talking, an email arrived from another ex-girlfriend, and then in came a text from the current girlfriend at her folks' house. Then 2 more emails, and before I was off the phone, 2 voicemails. And then regular friends started to contact me. This is just over 10 years ago now. It was Sunday, August 5th, 2012. Jeff Daniels was playing the controversial newscaster and commentator on Aaron Sorkin's HBO series Newsroom, which was based structurally on me and Countdown, and I know this because Aaron Sorkin told me so before he filmed any of it. And I know this because he asked me if he could base the pilot episode on what happened to me at MSNBC in the spring and summer of 2010. And I know this because he came in and shadowed the staff of Countdown for 2 days to get the feel for the place. And I know this because he wound up basing one character, Maggie Jordan, on my assistant, Margaret Judson, and then hiring Margaret Judson as a consultant, and then hiring her as an actress to play a part that wasn't supposed to be her. And I know this because he was furious when I would not fly to Denver, I think it was, to do a cameo in the pilot. And I know this because he said he was hiring me as a consultant. And I know this because I never saw a dime out of it. This was the second time Aaron Sorkin had based one of his TV series on one of my TV series. The other was called Sports Night, and Esquire magazine once asked me to interview Sorkin about Sports Night, and I asked him the real tough question. What was the origin of Sports Night? And his answer was, quote, "You are the origin." So when the New York Times had called me about Newsroom, I lightheartedly said it was nice to know in advance this time that Aaron Sorkin was making a TV series about me. Sorkin did not like this at all. And he told all his actors to tell all their interviewers that this was not true, and I know that because Jeff Daniels told me that that was what Sorkin had told him. Sorkin is interesting. I had known him for about 10 or 12 years when he came into Countdown to see what it looked and felt like, and he was 20 minutes late. And my assistant, Margaret, after whom he named Maggie Jordan, whom he then hired away from me, and whom he finally hired as an actress to play Tess Weston, and she was great, by the way. Margaret brings him in, and he apologizes for being late, and he says he's staying in a hotel 2 blocks away, and he should have just walked, but instead he got in a car. And the next thing he knew, he was 6 blocks away, caught in traffic caused by the complete shutdown of one of the crosstown streets for midday construction. And I laughed, and I said, well, Like my late father, the architect, used to say, New York, it'll be a great town whenever they finish it. And he laughed, and I laughed, and 2 years later, in the 7th episode of the HBO Newsroom series, first aired on August 5th, 2012, and re-aired throughout the week, Jeff Daniels as the anchorman Will McAvoy, who wasn't me, but actually kind of was me, is late to his newsroom because he gets caught in Manhattan traffic caused by Sunday night street construction, and he says to his exasperated producer, New York, it'll be a great town whenever they finish it. That's when my phone and email blew up, and the then girlfriend and like 40% of all of my exes ever all had the same question. New York, it'll be a great town whenever they finish it? Isn't that what your dad used to say? Even the ones who never met my dad knew this because I used to quote him constantly. Because the real humor in the quote is the fact that my dad was an architect and construction was his business. New York, it'll be a great town whenever they finish it. And then one of the last of the exes reached out. She waited until the show was over. Now, I don't think any of us is proud of this, but she had also dated Sorkin once or twice. And since she had written celebrity stories for a New York newspaper, he had later asked her by email what the world of gossip reporting was like, and she told him by email. And what she now told me made Aaron Sorkin's use of my dad's quote and other parts of my life seem like possible coincidences. She said she was watching the 3rd, maybe 4th episode of Newsroom, and in walked a new character, a gossip columnist, a woman. And the first sentence the character said was, my friend and ex said, word for word, something she had sent to Sorkin in one of the emails about the gossip business. She said when she heard it, her face started to get red, and it would keep getting redder. The gossip columnist character's second line had also been cut and pasted from my ex's email. Then her long speech, then all of her dialogue, she said, in her second scene. My ex actually managed to record that episode and to find her own email to Sorkin and to compare them, and she said other than changing a couple of tenses, he had used her answers verbatim. I met the actor Josh Charles during the 2000 World Series. I was there anchoring it for Fox Sports. Josh was there promoting his new show on Fox. Josh had played Dan Rydell on Sorkin's Sports Night series, and even Sorkin and I agree Dan Rydell is just me with a different haircut. I was walking up 6th Avenue one day in October 2000, and from several blocks away, I saw Josh Charles walking towards me. So I had several minutes to prepare what I could say to him. This was not spontaneous, sadly. But after our eyes met and I smiled and he gave me that, yes, I'm on TV look that I recognize and have myself deployed, he switched suddenly to shock and even a little apprehension. And I said the line I had been rehearsing in my head for several minutes. Excuse me, you don't get to say this often in life, but didn't you used to play me on TV? Right there on 6th Avenue, Josh told me about the ordeal of working with and for Aaron Sorkin, and I thought he just meant for actors. But I later found out because New York, it'll be a great town whenever they finish it. Josh and I are still friends. We've gone to ball games together. We were in a fantasy baseball league together, and one night on my ESPN2 show, we came back from commercial, giving the audience no warning or explanation, and we simply started co-anchoring the show and calling it Sports Night, and making references to the program and to Newsroom. And then he said, why did we keep reading this? And I said, I don't know. I just assumed Sorkin had run out of new ideas. The mutual laughter that followed was sincere. There is one more punchline to the Newsroom Sorkin story, because I was like his 7th guest ever. When Stephen Colbert wrapped up the Colbert Report on Comedy Central, I was invited to be on the final farewell episode. Me and like 99 other people. There were so many of us, ranging from Barry Manilow to Bryan Cranston to Big Bird, that they had like 9 green rooms in the Comedy Central building. And I get there and they send me to the green room I would be sharing with several other people, and I trudge up a bunch of stairs to the top floor, and in this big room there is only one other performer there yet. It's Jeff Daniels. Without saying hello, he says, now wait, let me explain. Sorkin told me, and I explained, and then he explained, and then I explained some more, and Jeff said, oh, a lot. And once he said, oops, and Sorkin didn't tell me that. And after about 3 minutes, he said, so I owe you an apology. And I said, no, you don't. It's not your fault. And he smiled and he said, well, great, I'm glad. So can we take a picture together that I can put out on Twitter? And I said, yeah, absolutely. But only if you capture it New York. It'll be a great town whenever they finish it. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. New York, it'll be great whenever they finish it. Countdown has come to you from our studios high atop the Sports Capsule building in New York. Here are the credits. Most of the music was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel. They are the Countdown musical directors. All orchestration and keyboards by John Philip Chanel. Guitars, bass, and drums by Brian Ray. Produced by TKO Brothers. Other Beethoven selections have been arranged and performed by No Horns Allowed. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2. It was written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. Musical comments by Nancy Faust, the best baseball stadium organist ever. Our announcer today was my friend Richard Lewis, and everything else was pretty much my fault. So that's Countdown for this, the 950th day since Donald Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Arrest him again while we still can. The next scheduled countdown is tomorrow. Bulletins as the news warrants. Till then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.